Most people think that success in the restaurant world means having a huge location, tons of employees, or a secret recipe. But what we learn from this guest is a much leaner, smarter approach to scaling the franchise model. Barry's Bagels has some pretty innovative ways that they have been able to scale with this hub and spoke model. I'll talk on today's episode with Mark and Jim. Jim is the son of the founder, Barry. Mark is his business partner, and they've learned how to take a brand from a small family shop in Toledo and grow it and really have some fantastic product that is going out and impacting different markets. They also talk about their hub and spoke model and how it helps them to find non-traditional ways to sell their product, including partnerships with different universities, different office buildings, and their off-premise wholesale channel really changes the way that you can drive top-line sales as well as continue to grow your business in non-traditional ways and fill up your pipeline from both a production perspective as well as a sales perspective before you even open your doors. They talk a ton about the ways that they've thought about things and how they've kept consistent product and quality as they continue to grow. If you don't know me, my name is Jeremy Julian. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for CBS North Star. If we wrote the North Star point of sale solution for multi-units, please check us out at cbsnorthstar.com. And now on to the episode. Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys podcast. I thank everyone out there for joining. As I like to say each and every time, I know you guys have lots of choices. So I'm grateful that you guys get to hang out with us. These are some really cool stories. I love bringing you guys founder led stories or stories of brands that are kind of, do a really good work and kind of learn what makes them tick and where they're at. And so it's always fun for me. Selfishly, as I travel, it's always cool when I get to go walk into one of those brands that I had on the show, or I get to run into somebody at a trade show. And so today we're meeting with the team from Barry's Bagels. And so, Mark, I'm going to let you introduce Barry's to the team yourself. I guess, where did you come from? And then you can introduce your business partner, Jim, and we can get rolling on the conversation.
For sure. Yeah. My name's Mark Greenblatt, owner of Barry Bagels. My father, Barry, started in 1972. We're located in Toledo, Ohio. He came from Detroit, Michigan, had a little bit of a background in food, came to Ann Arbor, Michigan, actually, to follow my mother, who was going to Eastern Michigan at the time. Worked at a bagel shop, very much enjoyed it. I decided he wanted to do his own thing. Came up to Toledo after looking at a few other random cities to see if that's where he wanted to be. But liked the proximity of Toledo with family. Came up with another gentleman who we had worked with, and they started a location called the Bagel Place again in 1972. Operated for a couple years. The gentleman, his partner Peter, was about 10 years older than him at the time, and really didn't want to go any further beyond that. So my father bought him out and changed the name to Barry Bagels, proceeded to open up multiple locations in the Northwest Ohio, Southeast Michigan area. And I came on, probably was working through high school, went to college for a little while. I came on board permanently in the early 2000s. Actually, very much enjoyed working with my dad. We had a great time and decided it was something that I wanted to continue with. Took over permanently in 2008. We decided we wanted to expand a little further outside of our reach. Had a couple sisters that were in the Cleveland area. We were very interested in opening in Cleveland. Found a couple locations that we liked in around probably 2010, 2011. We both realized that neither of us wanted to move to Cleveland. We thought one or the other one would at the time, but and also realized that our stores run very well because we were both operating them ourselves, but still wanted to continue to expand our brand, and then realized that maybe franchising would be the next great step. So I reached out to a friend of mine, Jim Nusbaum, who's on our call today, and asked him if he'd be interested in possibly looking at doing something with us. And subsequently, he did. And I'll let him take the story over from there.
Yeah, Jim, tell me a little bit about your background before you came and hung out with Mark, because it sounds like you guys knew each other prior to prior to you working together, and now you get the privilege of hanging out kind of more regularly. But where's your background come from? Tell me a little bit about your background and how you, I guess, even encountered the brand, and then how where you've been at since then.
Sure. No, thank you, and thank you for having us. Um, yeah, Barry started in 1972. I like to tell people I was probably one of the first customers, a little younger back then. But this is actually my second time uh, employed with Barry's. My first was as a 15-year-old in the back cutting onions and taking out the garbage. Barry took mercy on me and gave me a job when I was in high school. I then went to college and law school. I'm kind of a recovering lawyer. I
We
did
won't hold
a
that
lot.
against you.
Yeah, well, I sort of hold it against myself and did a lot of corporate work, corporate formation, represented businesses. Went in as in-house counsel to a business that was had a very similar structure to a franchising system. That business got sold, and I became a free agent. And right around the time when Mark and Barry had really made this kind of internal decision to expand, because the three of us knew each other very well and we had very complementary skill sets, we thought and think it made sense for us to sort of join together to grow the brand this way. And so we came up and formed a holdings company and with the charge of growing the brand through franchising. So and now, yes, I spend a lot of time with Mark, which is great. He's a business partner and great. He's the brand, and his dad, what him and his dad built is something special, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
I love that. Mark, talk to me a little bit about kind of the inception. Where did bagels come from? And it, obviously, you were, I'm guessing much younger when Dad started it. But I'd love to kind of talk a little bit about, and I think about bagels. I mean, part of what I was excited about is I love a good bagel.
Sure.
Unfortunately, there's never really been I don't say there's been, I guess the bagel brands out of Denver is the only one that I can think of that even has a footprint kind of beyond a local bagel shop. And so I love the idea of kind of spreading the love of bagels out. You get a lot of donut shops that are, nationwide or those kind of things, but bagels really haven't, in my opinion, there's not anybody that really owns the space other than your local corner bagel shop. I'd love to talk through kind of even the inception of where it was at. And then as you guys got to the second and third stores, what makes people kind of want to come back in and makes your guys' brand kind of different, special, whatever, other than having a bunch of 15-year-olds in the back cutting onions, like Jim said when he started years ago.
Right, right. Bagels, it's interesting. And you're right. We hear it all the time that, geez, you got to come to this city. There's no good bagels here and whatnot. And yeah, I'm biased. I think our product's real good. We boil and bake them. It's sort of the old school, everyone I think believes bagels came East Coast, New York style, where again, yeah, they're a water boiled, fresh dough, drop it in the water, boil them, throw them in an oven, bake them, finish them off. That is what we typically do. The East Coast bagel is a little crispier, a little harder on the outside. We've softened them up over the years to kind of put our own little unique twist on them. What we offer, I guess, a little different than everybody else. Most bagel shops are sort of just bagels and cream cheese, and get in, get out, and open first thing in the morning, close 1, 2 o'clock. That's it. We do offer that, but we offer significant breakfast. We do like the egg sandwiches on the bagels, which are quite delicious, bacon, sausage, cheese, whatnot. And then we do a very large lunch, corned beef, which is one of our top two sellers, turkeys, hams, roast beefs, all the deli meats, smoked salmon, big deal for us. All the cream cheeses we make fresh, and then we provide dinners, soup, salads, whatnot. We try and stay open as late as possible and give all three families and whatnot. So, we think we provide something a little more unique than the local corner bagel shop. And, we want to try and bring it to every city in the country, and hopefully we can.
I love that. Well, and funny enough, I live in a small little town in Texas, and there's a guy that actually he is also a recovering lawyer, Jim, who couldn't find a good bagel shop. And he's from the East Coast, and he literally went super nerdy and figured out how to go build bagels,
Yeah.
like make bagels. And him and his wife opened a bagel shop like in the pandemic. and they're doing really well. And,
It's
they're open
great.
5 days a week. But it's funny because he kind of did the same thing. He was like, you know what? I can't find a good bagel. I've actually talked to Dan because Dan's Bagels, and Dan's thing is like, you know what? I really was wishing that I could just find a good bagel, but in DFW, it was a 30-minute drive to find a decent bagel, not even a good bagel. And so he and his wife super nerded out, and they're doing really well. And I'm happy to call them friends, and
Yeah,
they're here in town. But I think, to your point, it's hard. It takes a lot of work, and to do it well. And it sounds like you guys have even pivoted. You talked a little bit about kind of the East Coast bagel, and kind of what you guys have done to continue to pivot to meet both consumer demands as well as your own taste profiles, I guess.
sure. Bagels seem to be having a little uptick in, it's a little more popular these days, and we love it. You're hearing about it a little more, and the more the merrier. We're happy that bagels are hitting the mainstream.
Love that. So, Jim, talk to me a little bit about you and I talked kind of pre-show before we hit the record button. One of the big things that again I know a lot of people struggle with, especially with just kind of the state of our industry through the pandemic, is site selection. I know, after 30 years in this business, site selection and being able to build out a store so that you have the right amount of square footage, but not too much. Because if you're paying for too much, you got to sell more. But if you have too little, or you don't have the right location, you don't have the right ingress and egress and the right parking, you and I talked a little bit about kind of the fact that you guys have found a way to help on the franchising model. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because it's been really cool. I had a previous guest from Rita's Italian Ice on a few weeks ago, and he and I were talking about the fact that they're taking old bank buildings and turning them into Aritas, and they're taking some different non-traditional locations. I'd love for you guys to kind of talk through what's an ideal location, and how have you guys helped some of the franchisees to find the right location to be able to offer your guys' product into the space.
Sure. So, yeah, obviously, everyone needs to you want to be sensitive to a couple things. One is we want great locations, which is Captain Obvious, right? I mean, correct side of the road and ingress, egress, and all of the things that make a location great. Secondary to that, but also very important, is, we have decided, at least strategically, we aren't going to reinvent the wheel relative to the interior of these spaces. And what we mean by that is, if I'm not trying to pick on Wendy's, they certainly are successful. But if I blindfolded you and dropped you into a Wendy's, you would have no idea where you are. It would look the same. And again, that's their strategy, and it's fine. We're a little different. We want to work with what's already there to minimize, build out costs as much as possible, while still maintaining the integrity of our branding and our operational efficiency. So we will use as much as we can in the current space to, do those two things. And so we're not going to strip it down to the studs unless, it just has to be done that way. But the second thing we do is, we really focus on multi-unit development. And so the first store in a region is going to be what we call a hub store, where we bake and we store bagels, and we have a walk-in cooler, freezer, and an oven, and all the things you need to do to produce. And it's also a retail store. That store, just by definition of the equipment and necessary HVAC, is going to be our pricier of the two footprints. But from there, we're going to build spoke locations, which are probably half the size of the hub location. And really, we don't bake there. And what we do is we take bagels throughout the day and kind of milk runs from the hub to the spokes. And, we can turn, because we're not baking, we can turn a Verizon, a Great Clips, into Berry Bagels with, some cosmetic work and some FF&E, and get going for, somewhere usually between 10 to 25% of the cost of a hub. It's a great way
Wow.
for us to get in very dense areas, because now we don't have to be afraid of high per foot rents. It's a great way to build out efficiently, and it's a great way to smooth out CapEx costs for hubs over multiple locations. So we think it's a pretty good model. It's sensitive to franchisees who want to build out multiple locations, but also we're sensitive to their capital needs and requirements. And so far, so good. And, again, we make sure the bagels are fresh. That's sort of the first commandment, right? And so we make
Yeah.
sure we deliver them and do all those things. But at the same time, it allows us to back off of the capital necessary to grow in a market. And I think it's a nice way to be sensitive to macroeconomic trends at the time.
Well, and I think, like you said, you can get into a smaller space because you don't need. I'm sure permitting is easier because you're not having to deal with all of the permitting. You're taking a retail store that's just retail, and you're just selling products that's already kind of made somewhere else, and so it makes it a lot quicker, easier to get up and running. And so I love that idea. I hadn't even considered that, and that's great that you guys have been able to figure out how to pull that off.
Yeah, so far so good. Mark and Barry really figured out how to pull it off here in Toledo. We've, I think, been able to do a nice job exporting it to our different franchise territories. And again, our brand's going to be as successful as our franchisees are. And we're very
Yeah,
cognizant of that. And so we want to give them every opportunity and every, possibility to be successful. And this is one of the ways we do that.
awesome.
Today's episode is brought to you by Restaurant Technologies Incorporated. They are the leaders in automated cooking oil management. And if you're not familiar with them, they've been on the show a few times to share some of the unique and cool things that they've been doing in the oil management space. They have an end-to-end closed-loop automated system that helps deliver, monitor, filter, collect, and recycle your cooking oil. Sounds like a lot. It's because they do a ton to help clean up one of the dirtiest jobs and most dangerous jobs in your kitchen. You can check them out by visiting rti-inc.com or by calling 888-779-5314. They've already helped over 45,000 customers in the United States with their cooking oil, so clearly they're doing something right. Now back to the episode.
Mark, talk to me a little bit about the culture and kind of how you guys have been able to not just export the culture, but I'm sure family business.
Sure.
You've been in the stores for much of your life. I'm sure there's lots of people that come in and kind of are on a regular basis. How do you export not just what you believe, but you're now out in franchises? Jim talked about fresh bagels and all of that kind of thing, and that's part of it. Being at the
Yeah.
forefront of the brand and talking to people. There's lots of things that you have to do to be successful, especially as you get out of your core markets. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how you export that out to these different regions. Because when it was family, a little bit easier. Now that it's not family, and you guys are getting beyond that and getting outside of your core geography, what would you give our listeners that are in that place? What have you found to be successful? Most important rules as you're going out and looking for franchisees and watching them continue to grow. And to Jim's point, you're only going to be as successful as they are. So how do you make sure that that happens?
Yeah, it's tricky, and you're right. The success we've had here to try and get it to translate outside of the market, what we've been telling people, and we're pretty specific about who we look for in franchisees. First and foremost, we want owner operators. I think that's very important. As I tell these people when we interview them, it's not a hobby.
Hmm.
If you think you're going to open the doors and cash is going to come flying in, you don't know the restaurant business. It's, as 24/7, 365. I give each one of them when they sit down, and I try and give them the good. The prospective franchisees, I give them the good, and there's so much good, right? And I give
Hmm.
them, and I don't want to call it the bad, but I'm a
The
realist,
hard.
and I give them the hard, and I give them the same story every time. And it's what I told my wife when we were dating. I said, listen, I've got a good gig going, but at the same time, I'm going to get phone calls at 3 in the morning that the walk-in freezer is at 40 degrees and the phones ring. And if we're on vacation, the phones ring and I answer them. And, like I said, it's 24/7, 365. If you can handle that, we can do a lot of fun stuff, but if you're not a part of it, it's tough. It's demanding. And so again, owner operators, that's what we look for. And, I think I I try and show them that, you know, obviously treat your employees great. I've been fortunate. I actually just had another employee. I think we were looking, it's now my seventh employee that just turned 40 years working for us. And we started in 1972. So that's a pretty good chunk.
That's incredible.
I've got another couple that are going to hit 40 years within a year. I've got a few that are going to hit 50 years pretty soon, one that's over 50 years, and another handful that are well over 30 years. So treat your employees good. Tell the employees, treat them how you expect them to treat the customers, and show it as a family, run it as a family owned business. Put that out there. Customers appreciate that. They want you to converse with them. They want you to make them feel like they're coming in for just more than just food. And that's been successful for us, and we're hoping that's going to translate out further. Aside from the fact that we think we have a great product, like I said, maybe I didn't mention it before. Again, where we're a little more unique, or a lot of bagel shops are just baking first thing in the morning, and sort of just letting those ride out. We bake small batches all day long. We want you to have I don't like to use the word fresh. They're always going to be fresh, but a hot, in a perfect world, right out of the oven. Maybe not right out of the oven, but within a very short time, little batches all day long. So you're getting a fabulous, baked product consistently. And so yeah, that's what's worked for us to date since 1972. That's what we push on the franchisees. That's what we, strive to get them to do and follow up on, and we're hoping that's the successful recipe moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about, Jim and I talked about site selection and franchise selection is key. Finding the right people, understanding
Yeah,
it's they can't just be a huge fan of the brand that just, oh, I love having Berry Bagels. Like they
for
need to
sure.
understand that it's hard. I was talking to
It's
a president of a 30-ish unit brand out of the Carolinas, and I was like, hey, why don't you growing faster? Because their product is fantastic. He's like, because everybody that comes in that's just like, I love Groucho's Deli, they're fine, but they don't really understand how hard it is to run a restaurant. And
yeah.
to your guys' point, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's super fulfilling and it's great when you do it right, but it's also not for the faint of heart. And it's not just because you love to eat bagels or love the product innovation. You got to actually be willing to put in the elbow grease to get there.
100%. And yeah, I mean, could I, sit there and open up, 10 more and, everywhere and, see how they do? I could, but, I've got great employees, and again, like I said, the tenure that they have. So I'm comfortable with, obviously I can't be more than one place at one time, but these people have been with me. And so, they're like pseudo owner operators. So yeah, you open slowly, but in a smart way as you progress and get better. But yeah, it's not easy, but they learn it and they understand it, and hopefully they're successful with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love these kind of success stories. Last kind of line of questioning, Jim, you and I talked kind of again when we were hitting before we hit the record button about some of the non-traditional revenue channels that you guys have been able to figure out. You get the hub and spoke, which I think is really innovative and a really cool way to do that. But you've also shared a little bit of kind of your off-prem, I don't say strategy, but I'd love for you to talk to our listeners a little bit about that. A lot of people are trying to figure out the whole catering. They recognize where catering can move the needle, and whether it's catering or it's kind of off-prem. I know you guys got some unique ways of going about that, but I'd love for you to share another uniqueness about what you guys do, because I do think that is a little bit of an unlock if you want to be in this business, that you can drive some additional sales in unique ways that I hadn't heard of before we got on the call.
Sure. No, happy to talk about it. So obviously, off premises revenue, as you said, is certainly of high priority for everybody. And catering, or what we're sort of calling group ordering, is something that most, if not all, brands are either have developed or are working to develop. And we certainly do a lot of it. But what we do in addition to that, in terms of off premises, is we have found that there are a lot of organizations that want to either consume or resell food, but not make it. I'll give you a good example would be a school system maybe that doesn't have a cafeteria, or a college, professional school, or office complex. So we push to our franchisees in their territories this idea of what we call wholesale, which is every day we sell fresh bagels for resale and consumption to schools, universities, hospitals, office complexes. What that means, practically speaking, is at 6 or 7 in the morning, the franchisees send, well, probably at 4:30 they come in and bake dozens or hundreds of dozens, and we then deliver them to just do a route, and we take them to For example, our Dayton franchisee does the University of Dayton. Our Ann Arbor store does the University of Michigan. We do all sorts of office complexes, school systems, hospitals. And what it really signals to our franchisees from a value proposition is we aren't content with just waiting for people to come in the store. We're certainly going to do and emphasize driving customer
Correct.
count right in our four walls. And, it's obviously an area of high emphasis, but we are going to provide these other revenue streams and these other opportunities for you to go out with our help and, get accounts or make contacts or do anything like that. So the idea is, again, while there's those four walls of the store, the ability to do off premises is expanded with our brand. And we think it's a value, for our franchisees and something, we're excited.
Well, and I think the thing that I love about your guys' offer is just that they've almost got a built-in sales base that can help cover some of that. If for whatever reason you don't have the people coming in. And
Yeah.
I've had 2 different people come on the show in the last 6 months that talk about off-prem and how to maximize off-prem, whether it's be through technology or the sales methods and some of these kind of things. I love that you guys have got this offer, and clearly, because you've already built out the hub and spoke model, you've got the ability to figure out how to produce product and get it transported to a place that people can still enjoy it and have a great experience without compromising quality. And the other thing that I also love about it, I guess I'd love for you guys to talk about this before we wrap up, is just that also is probably an awareness thing. They're now seeing it at the college, and they'd never had the bagels, but now they're at this college, they're at this university, they're at this office complex, and now it's like, oh, I'm driving home and I see it. Now it turns into a great marketing venue. So I guess I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I'll let Mark talk about that one.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, exactly. I mean, take University of Michigan for example. It we have a store that it's very successful in Ann Arbor, but just outside of campus. But we do all the bagels for the university, the dorms, the fraternity houses, sorority houses. We also do the hospital systems. So yeah, it's like you said, a perfect marketing ploy for us, because now these people, they've tried us. We've since, we've gotten the fraternities and sororities to call us to cater their organizational events, their philanthropy events. We're getting the drug reps coming to the hospital. They've seen us. They've had our bagels at the kiosks, at the coffee shops. They're now catering in from the doctors. So yeah, it's perfect. It's aside from the fact that it's a great revenue stream of business for the store, it's picking up additional revenue from these people that don't necessarily get on our side of town in Ann Arbor, but now they can. And now, they can order online and we can bring it to them. And it's just, it just works hand in hand, and it's been fantastic for us.
Yeah. So I must ask the question, Ohio-based brand going into the University of Michigan. Are you Ohio State fans? Are you Michigan fans? Or you're bagel fans, I guess, at the
We're
end of the day.
We're a divided family on this call.
Right.
Obviously,
Mark
I'm teasing.
Mark's a season ticket holder at U of M, and I'm currently have 2 children at the Ohio State University. So
Ohio State University.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, so I
won't tell you.
we're a
I've
house
got
divided.
a good friend who is a Michigan State guy, and about a year and a half ago, I went to Michigan State, Michigan hockey at the Michigan State Stadium, and that was a lot of fun.
It's they're all good.
Michigan
they're all
State's
great rivalries. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
And great schools.
Awesome.
And great schools.
Yeah. No, and we've got somebody that works on our team that lives up in Columbus, because his stepdaughter goes to the Ohio State University, and he actually is a UT guy, is from Texas, and so it drives him crazy when he walks into places and people have to have 2 people to spell the word Ohio. For him,
we're proud of
his big joke.
spelling. Yeah, we're real proud of spelling here in the Midwest. But yes, it's you get brainwashed real quick. It's a great school. Michigan's fantastic, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I obviously had to take a couple minutes to pick on you guys, and funny enough that you guys are house divided. So tell us, Jim, I know you kind of head up franchising. What does it look like to engage? What do you get? Mark kind of shared a little bit earlier in the episode of what you guys are looking for. I'd love for you to walk our listeners through, if they want to learn more, they want to get, you guys are looking for, it sounds like, master franchisees. How far out are you guys going? Do they need previous restaurant experience? Talk through a little bit about what you guys are looking for and how they can engage with the team.
Yeah, so they can engage with us at berrybagels.com. There's a franchising tab, and there's a place to send in an inquiry. It actually comes right to me. In terms of what we're looking for, we really do focus on multi-unit developments with a caveat that, we do the hub and spokes, to be sensitive to capital needs. I think in terms of previous experience, it's a plus, but not required. What we're looking for more are people who, and again, I don't want to get too cliched, but, who want to provide service. And I mean, people who are comfortable working with the public, people who are comfortable supervising employees. I always tell people, listen, there's nothing wrong with being an introvert, and, that's totally fine, but this might not be a great fit, and that's okay.
Mhm.
We want people who want to learn, but we also want people who have their own ideas that we can also benefit from. Our franchisees have come up with some really good innovation suggestions, and one thing I'm particularly proud of is that we're good listeners. If there's a better way to do something or a new way to do something, we'll certainly listen and copy or, put it throughout the whole brand. But we want people who are going to be good stewards of the brand in their community, who want to be involved in their community, who want to be, the person who hires high school kids or college kids in their community, provides a great place to work. I think our first duty is to serve our employees, to make sure that they're happy and safe and comfortable and working in a positive environment. If they are, that translates to customer service. If they're not, that also translates to customer service. And then, obviously, the customers in the community, we want them to be the CEO of Berry Bagels within their market and take
Mhm.
that position and be the face of the brand with our support. And we can teach them the food business. We can teach them, through our training and our, support, that we can teach them. We've gotten our operations pretty efficient and easy to learn. We provide a lot of training, but we can't train you to be, um, you know, supportive and a good person, all of those
Yeah,
things.
you can't.
So we
I
want
can't
those
change
sort
the
of
way that your mother raised you, is what I like to say around
yeah,
that
we want
business.
we want those sort of intrinsic positives with people. We can train you on the skill set, and I think that's really what we're looking for.
Awesome, Mark. What did we miss that you want our listeners to hear about Berry Bagels and kind of the legacy that you and your family are continuing to put out into the world?
I don't know. We covered a lot. Listen, I don't know. Fabulous brand. I've been telling everyone I just want to get my dad's name everywhere across the country because I know how great it is, and I know how great he was, and so I want to. That's what I'm trying to do, and Jimmy's doing a great job making that come to fruition. So hopefully it'll happen, and
I love
hopefully
that.
there'll be a berries everywhere for everyone to experience.
One last question for each of you, rapid fire, real quick. What's
Yeah.
your go-to? Mark, what's your go-to item? And Jim, what's your go-to item? If they've
Let
never
Mark
been
go
to a
first.
Berry Bagel, what's the number one thing you need to try?
Yeah,
I'll let
I'm a
Mark go
everything
first.
bagel, corned beef, Havarti. That's me. That's what I get. I love it.
How about you, Jim?
My go-to, the things you need to try are pastrami and corned beef, which are fantastic. My daily go-to is our Eggle, which is a breakfast sandwich. I get an everything bagel toasted with egg, pepper jack cheese, and bacon.
That's
And
pretty good.
it cures what ails you, no matter what.
Love it.
It's pretty great.
Awesome.
But yeah, in terms of things to know, and I mean, Jeremy, for you, we are in, we do have 109 stores either open or under development in 7 states. One of them happens to be Texas. We're looking right now in the DFW area actively, and so
Awesome.
we're excited to keep growing and work with great franchisees and serve great communities. So we're excited about it.
Thank you guys for sharing the story. Thank you guys for what you guys have built. I'm grateful for you guys coming on. And to our listeners, guys, like I said at the onset, you guys have got lots of choices. So thanks for hanging out with us. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the show. Check out Berry Bagels and see what their offerings are for franchising, and make it a great day.
Hey,
Thank
thanks a
you.
lot.